I love to travel, and as soon as I can, I take a flight to a new place.
And it might also be the same for you. But traveling is expensive. It is not always easy to have the money you would need to go where you want to. And because of that, I used to not travel as much as I would have liked. But this is one of my greatest passions. And I did not want to renounce to it. This is why over the last years, I've spent weeks trying to understand how I could travel, but doing it in a cheaper way. And thanks to that, I managed to travel in 4 continents and in more than 20 different countries over the last 3 years. So in this video, I want to share with you the 7 tricks that I've learned that will let you enjoy traveling while not emptying your wallet. And just imagine that the last trick saved me more than $20,000 over the last years. And let's start with the first one, because it can actually save you thousands of dollars in just a couple of seconds. Because this is one of the most common things that people do wrong. And it is very important because it is the first thing you have to do when you start planning for your trip. And imagine that for me, when I went to Thailand, it cut my costs from around 2.5k to just $1,300. And to do that, you just have to make a decision. A decision which is much simpler than what you might think. Because you just have to make a little effort which you might not be used to plan your trip by yourself. Because still nowadays, there's a lot of people using travel agencies. But thanks to the internet, now travel agencies do what we can all do. They find everything on the internet, on the same websites that you would use, and then they make you pay the double of the actual price. And so you can just do what they do, you can do it by yourself, and trust me, it's not difficult. Sure, you have to get used to it, but it's not more difficult than making a research on the internet, watching a YouTube video, because thanks to that you can have all the information you need. And you get all of this information in just a matter of seconds. So if you want to save thousands over your next trips, don't use travel agencies. Okay, now there is actually a big bucket with which you have to deal with. Because most of the time when you travel, you have to take a flight. And flights are extremely expensive, especially now after COVID. But despite that, over the last 4 years, I've taken more than 150 flights. And never once I've paid too much for a flight. And this thanks to several tricks I've learned that I use to book my flights and that you can also use. And doing that, I managed to pay up to 50% less for the flight. So here, let's see how to drastically reduce your flight's cost. And the first thing you have to do is to choose to travel during off-peak seasons. Because let's make an example. I want to travel to Bangkok now, and I would like to do it during Christmas. And the flight at this moment will cost me $940. But if I just go some weeks earlier, I will only pay $640. And just by doing that, I would be saving $300, which is a huge amount of money, especially if you're trying to travel cheap. And this is why you should always try to travel off-peak season, as well as you should always have a little flexibility on your dates, because like this you will be able to get the best deals for your flights. So now let's say that you're traveling for holidays and you might know that you already want to go to an exotic country, or maybe you want to go to the beach. You probably already have a good destination in your mind. So now you will probably search the flights for this destination and choose the best period for it. But what if there were other destinations which would offer you the same, but with flights which are much cheaper? Because this is what really happens. In the world, you have many countries to visit, many which are kind of similar, or at least they offer the same type of experience. But some sometimes have flights that are much more expensive. And so looking for alternatives can offer you great trips, but for half the price. And this is why you should also have some degree of flexibility for your destination. And this actually becomes super simple with websites like Kiwi and Skyscanner, which allow you to compare many destinations at the same time. And actually these websites don't only do that, but they also tell you which are the best moments to buy the flights, as well as the price trend for your destination. Okay, now you have your dates and your destination, and you have already saved hundreds of dollars. But there's still one thing that you can do, because when you buy a flight, you probably have the tendency to also buy a checked baggage. But think that in average, it costs at least $40 per flight. And if you're trying to travel cheap, this is a huge amount of money. And this is why something that you absolutely have to learn to do is to pack light. So buy a good backpack, buy a good cabin luggage, and you can easily travel with just that. And I know it can look like a challenge, but believe me, it is totally doable. And much easier than what you might think. And so doing all of that for your flights, you will easily manage to save half of the price over your next trips. But now let's go to something that can save you even more. Because imagine that in average, it saves me between $100 and $200 per day per person while I'm traveling. And thanks to that, over the last years, I've saved more than $20,000. So as you can understand, this is a big game changer. And it will incredibly reduce your expense. So the key word here that you must repeat 100 times is don't be the average tourist. But what does this mean? And it just means to not do everything as a tourist. Try to be more like a local. Try to live the city as a local. And I'll take you my favorite example because I love food, and when I travel, one of my goals is to test the best local cuisine. And so I try to eat out as much as I can. And let's take now the example of when I went to Thailand. Because when I arrived in Bangkok, it was lunch, I was hungry, and so I went to a restaurant close to the hotel. And the restaurant was normal, the food was good, and I paid $20. But then, in the evening, I went to a local street market, and for amazing food, I paid only $1.50. That's nothing, it's 13 times less, and I ate much better, the experience was much better. And the same happens in Rome, for example, because if you go have lunch close to the Trevi fountain, you will easily spend at least $30. But if you go to a more typical area, local area, you will spend $10 and you will have much better food. So try to be more local and stay away from these tourist traps, because you will lose a huge amount of money. Because just think that if I didn't do that in Thailand, I would have spent around $560 worth of food. Whereas going to local places, I only spent $80 for 2 weeks. And again, the food was much better. Another thing you have to be careful has actually happened to me 2 weeks ago when I was visiting Tunisia. And so I wanted to go to the famous oasis close to Tozeur, close to the desert. And so I checked some group excursions and they were like $100 per person, which can look okay for us Europeans and Americans, but not for Tunisians. And so instead of doing the group excursion, I rent a car, $35. And then we found a local guide on place that made us an amazing tour of the oasis for just $8. And so we had a great experience, and we also managed to save $157. And all the same can be said for your accommodation. You really have to search for hotels and Airbnbs carefully, because you don't need to be 100 meters from the Colosseum. You don't need to have the all-inclusive 5-star hotel. Just choosing the correct accommodation can save you more than $100 per day. So spend more time on booking an Airbnb to find something that is really in your budget. So if you use all of these tricks, you will easily save hundreds if not thousands of dollars every trip you will make, which actually means that you will be able to travel more and you will not have to renounce to anything. And if you're watching this video, it means that you surely want to know how to have more money in general, how to be able to afford the life that you want. Well, if this is the case, you can watch this video. Thank you for watching and see you soon.